Why, hello there, everybody, and welcome to the Talking City podcast, brought to you by the Manchester Evening News. My name is Dan Murphy, and joining me today, now I'm back off my holiday, is Mr. Joe Bray. Joe, how's it going?
I'm good, thanks, Dan. I'm glad you're back because I was hosting last week and it just wasn't the same. I don't think I had the energy that you always bring to the podcast.
Well, I say I'm refreshed, I'm rejuvenated, I'm ready to rock and roll, and I'm hoping just as enthusiastic with us as also is Mr. Simon Bajkowski. Si, how was thee?
Yeah, good, thanks. You've got a bit of Rick Astley rhythm to your voice there in that intro.
I've not actually seen it yet. I've only seen him doing some AC/DC, didn't he? He looked sick. I can't wait to dive into that. But I'm still on the Crocodile Rock hype.
Smith set that it's worth. Him with Blossoms.
Yeah, that's top of my list. I will be getting to that, don't you worry. But yeah, all Crocodile rocked out at the minute because, big. Hey, this is a City podcast and it is quite relevant, isn't it? Big Elton. What a way to
John. Sir Elton, get it right.
Yeah, and he does. I think Big is like a more kind of complimentary name than Sir, personally. But that's just a my perspective. Big Elton. Big Sir Elton. Absolutely smashed it. And I tell you, someone else who has smashed it over the last 7 years, but sadly won't be doing it any longer in a Manchester City shirt, is, of course, Ilkay Gundogan. Good timing for us for a change. The big news has happened before the podcast recording, but it's sad news for all City fans as Ilkay Gundogan has confirmed he will be leaving the club upon the expiration of his contract and heading to Barcelona on a free transfer. He's penned a lengthy and heartfelt tribute on the City website. I can't go through it all because it'll take me ages and I'll probably stumble over it to high heaven. But, he says it's a total privilege to have played for City over the last 7 years. It'll ever be his home. He'll forever be a blue. And yeah, any City fan who hasn't read it already, I'll go over there and I'm sure you'll shed a tear. But you may well want to stay here first because you might shed a tear at the tributes to follow. Because Simon, what a player who's been here since the start of Guardiola's reign, the first signing, and even though it got off to an inauspicious start with a couple of gnarly injuries, one who kind of overcame such hardship to be one of the real kind of, until probably the last 2 years, one of like the underappreciated faces of the side. But now everyone kind of appreciates just how incredible a player he is.
Yeah, I don't think there's any kind of real surprise in the fact that he's kind of grown to be more appreciated once David Silva left the club. He was kind of always behind, Silva and De Bruyne in that midfield in the perception. But certainly since 2018, free from injuries, he has been a phenomenal player for the club. And, so many great moments to think about, and his captaincy this season has been exceptional. He will go down in history for leading City to the treble, and we'll probably end up with a pitch named after him at the training ground. And given he's done his coaching or is doing his coaching badges, who knows? Maybe we will see him at the Etihad at some point in the future.
Yeah, he certainly seems the type of player who will be gracing the Premier League again one day, if it's in a managerial capacity or not. But, Joe, like, what a player. The stats, are incredible. Signed in 2016, 7 years, 304 games, 60 goals, 40 assists. But I think what kind of makes Gundogan so good and will be so memorable, other than his kind of clutch goals and whatnot, which we'll come on to, but just so many moments of kind of unquantifiable greatness. I'm sure all the statos at City can have on record how many times he's won loose balls and played amazing passes. We don't, or at least I don't anyway. But that's the sort of figures that reach into the countless territory, and he's just been so important to City for years now. And there probably was a period, maybe 2020, 21, when he wasn't kind of playing as much and he was in and out of the team. But the way he's kind of come back, it was always, we'll get on to his captaincy. It seemed to be quite the surprise when he got the armband, because he wasn't quite like the guaranteed starter that De Bruyne is. But to kind of wrestle his way back in and just be so important for so long is incredible. I know we'll talk on some of his favourite moments in a bit, but the 2019 season is what I'm going to specifically praise him for myself.
I wouldn't say it's a surprise when he got the captaincy. He's been there obviously a long time, and he's one of those sort of lead by example players rather than lead with the sort of big speeches and put the heart on the sleeve. But he was one of them where you can't really remember him having a bad game. And if he ever did find himself out of the team, it was because other players were playing well, and then he'd come back and you'd be like, oh yeah, this guy is very, very good at football, and suddenly he's scoring 20 goals a season, or he's put in the top corner from 30 yards. And yeah, like you mentioned, he scores a lot of big goals in big games. And every time he pops up in the box and scores these goals, I find myself thinking, oh yeah, Gundogan is here as well. It's not just Silva or Bray or whoever striker they've got, whether it's Sergio Aguero or Erling Haaland. He's one of them that he goes under the radar because he just does everything well and right. And I don't think it's any surprise that when it comes to the run-ins, Gundogan is always in this season, last season. I'm thinking about the goal at Brighton when they won the league. Was it? I mean, all these seasons get mixed up into one. Was it 2019 when they won on the final day? Yeah. So I think he'll be missed more towards the end of next season rather than the beginning. I think we'll get to next season and think, okay, that it's fine. Look at this midfield. Look how good it is. But then they'll get to games where they really need to win, and Gundogan is one of those who really pulled them through in seasons gone by, and that might be where they'll feel his exit more than most.
I don't think it can be overlooked, side, just how difficult his first kind of couple of years were at the club. I mean, he was basically pre-agreed to sign in the summer of 2016, and then he suffered a very serious knee injury a 9-month before even joining. I think he even went on record saying he feared the deal would collapse, but Guardiola was like, no chance, I'm having you. He came in, he eventually recovered, looked good when he finally got on the pitch, but then not long after suffered another injury that wiped him out for the best part of a year. To come back from such hardship, a lot of players, you've seen so many careers kind of fall by the wayside when this gets, 2 injuries like that in such quick succession. It'd be no surprise or shame if he hadn't have reached the heights he has, but to do so after such setbacks, such hardship, is even more kind of just more credit to the player he is and the character he is.
Yeah, I think it was 3 bad injuries in 4 years, and that kind of really made him stop. And he had a spinal injury when he was at Dortmund, and I think one of the doctors basically said, "Yeah, you won't play football again." And fortunately, he did. But all that kind of forced him to think about how he was sort of approaching his career. And after sort of that run of bad injuries, he then kind of started adjusting things. And, he sort of limits the use of his phone before going to bed, because then you'll sleep better. And if you see them in training, he won't be the one having like a silly kick around. He does exactly what he knows his body can do, and he goes through the same warm-up every time. And make sure that he's not taking any unnecessary risks that might put his playing time at fault or at risk. And that is why, I think Ederson, Haaland and Rodri are the only players who played more than him this season. And sort of, after the quarterfinal in Bayern Munich, certain players needed a rest. Gundogan played the FA Cup semi at Sheffield United. After the semi-final in Madrid, certain players needed a rest. Gundogan wasn't. So, City's kind of contract offer towards him was built on the idea of, well, you're 32 and you're not getting any younger. And in fact, he was, not playing like a 32-year-old. So Barcelona are a cock a hoop with signing him, and rightly so. And it'll be interesting to see how many more years he has at the top.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk about kind of City's role in this and how much of a blow it's going to be, and if it's perhaps a misstep on their part momentarily. But first, let's keep focused on the tributes and all the good vibes, Joe. Like, 60 goals, 40 assists, countless amazing performances. Like, what are some of your favourite kind of highlight moments, goals, anything from his 7 years at the club?
Well, I think it's easy to get sort of have recency bias in that, because obviously the FA Cup final goals were brilliant, especially that first one. The goals to those back-to-back braces to win the Premier League effectively this season. And by the way, we were talking last week when you went here, Dan, about goals of the season. I don't think we mentioned Gundogan against Everton, which was arguably the goal of the season, which is that sort of flick and improvised finish. And he put in his players' tribute article that he definitely meant it. So, fair play. And, how we missed that is beyond me. But, that sort of summed him up, because he could score all those. He could score the tap-ins. He could score the goals where he arrives on the edge of the area. He could score the wonder goals like the FA Cup final. And, that scored the big goals. And I think either City or Gundogan put out a video today of his sort of moments, and I'd forgotten that he'd scored even at the start of his career when, yes, he was injured, but he was sort of playing whenever he did play, he was playing well. And he scored twice against Barcelona at the Etihad when City weren't the side in Europe that they currently are. And so he's always been the one who's scoring them big goals. And I think one that I remember more than most is when Ederson just launched it downfield and he controlled it, left, was it Davinson Sanchez on his backside, and finished against Tottenham. And that was when he was scoring. He was City's false nine in that season and took up the goal scoring mantle when no one else would. And that was one that was just sort of a memorable one. But yeah, like I say, the goal against Brighton on the final day of that season, and we've got to mention the Aston Villa goals as well. So there are so many, and I'm sure I will have missed an obvious one or two as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the craziest thing there is, like you're saying, how he played up front basically and was getting in amongst the goals. In contrast, I'm going to praise the season when he was playing the holding role. The 2018-19 year. Fernandinho got injured, didn't he? Towards the end of the year, couldn't play as much. City had no one a natural replacement to fill his boots. So Gundogan goes there for the last however many games it was that season. It might even been for most of that second half of the campaign, and he was absolutely sublime there. As you say, he's more. The role we've come to kind of know and love in recent years has been that dynamic, getting up the pitch, winning those loose balls, pressing high, and being involved at the goal mouth. But to kind of completely go back and just go in that deep sitting role, it got City through that season. And you mentioned his goal there against Brighton. It was the fourth in a 4-1 win. It was that afternoon when I think Liverpool were winning the league for all of 8 minutes before City came back after going behind. But it was so fitting, I thought, then that he kind of capped the season off with a stunning free kick, because it was obviously there's so many great players. That season it was Vincent Kompany as well, of course, winning the campaign with that screamer against Leicester. But he was like, if it wasn't for him, you get the impression City might not have won the title that year. Liverpool were sublime as well, driving them all the way to the end. And the way they stepped up, I say, in a completely different role, was just kind of really does typify how it's almost like the ideal Guardiola player, I find. Like, the total football kind of ideal personified. You can play anywhere on the pitch and always be incredible when he does it side. But yeah, any moments from your memory?
No, you've stolen them both. No, I think what is nice for Gundogan is that he was kind of synonymous with a few of City's more notable failures. When City really thought they were going to win the Champions League in 2018, and then they went to Liverpool, Guardiola played Gundogan and for that control in midfield, and it all went wrong. 2021 final, played a holding midfielder all year, and then that's the first time he plays without Rodri or Fernandinho, and it's Gundogan, and they lose. So it was really fitting that his last act as a City player was to lift the Champions League trophy in Istanbul, but also that he'd made those moments since of like the goals against Aston Villa on the final day, or the goals this season. I think it just kind of sums him up that the two seasons you both mentioned, he was amazing as a false nine, and none of us thought he would be when Pep first mentioned it, but he was just slotted in so seamlessly. And even that 18-19 season, Fernandinho was injured for a lot of it. He wasn't injured for all of it, but still Gundogan kept his place, and it was like he was and is kind of one of the best eights in the game. But when you needed him to be a world-class 6 or a world-class 9, he'd just do that. And they sort of jokes about him being prime Zidane in the latter months of every season, but basically he could be prime whoever you wanted him to be, and he could do it. He was and is that good. I keep saying was, like we're at a funeral or something, but he is still that good.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we haven't mentioned it enough, the goal in the FA Cup final, of course, after 12 seconds, for Christ's sake, it was amazing.
But also he scored the goal in the derby against United. I think it was 2019, maybe the game before Mourinho got sacked, where it was like, was it 43 passes? And it was just like utter domination. And it was fitting that it was him that got it.
Yeah, absolutely. So many amazing moments over those 7 years. If you've got any favourites, please send them over to at Man City MEN. But we'll bring part 1 to a close there, and we'll come back in just a moment to discuss how City cope without their star captain. Don't go anywhere. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Talking City podcast. We've got all the tributes and the glowing praise well and truly kind of done. It's out of the way. Now we need to talk about where City stand at this place, because they're losing such an important player, a player who has started every important game towards the end of the season. Even games that weren't important, he was still starting. City have got used to waving goodbye to kind of massive legends over the recent years. For the last 4 summers, they've lost Fernandinho, Sergio Aguero, David Silva, and Vincent Kompany. And then even further than that, you go back to Joe Hart leaving, Pablo Zabaleta leaving, Yaya Toure leaving. I'm sure there's people I've forgotten there. But none of them, Joe, have ever been still at the peak of their powers. If anything, Gundogan's still playing the best football of his career. All those other players mentioned, while still brilliant players, were kind of noticeably on the decline, and it was the right time to go. This time it feels different. It doesn't, from a City perspective at least, it doesn't feel like the right time to go. They're losing the captain again for the 4th time in a row as well, but they're just losing a player who's still so integral to how City play, to how they win. And they say a treble with winning captain, lest we forget, just over 2 weeks ago, we lifted the Champions League after playing in both finals, and the run-in, playing such a crucial role in the run-in too. So, this is a massive blow, one that City might not have faced as much in recent years.
Yeah, I think it is. And those names you mentioned, I think most of them City would probably have kept for another year, maybe. Especially, I'm thinking Vincent Kompany. You're not going to turn down a chance to stay with him for another year. But again, it's that sort of feeling that once they're over 30, and Gundogan's 32, and if you offer him a 2-year deal, he's then 34, and there's a lot of risks with it. He's obviously had his injury problems. I think it makes sense why City have kept a sort of strict line on that contract, but they've still got to go and do what they've done with all those other players, which is replace them, and they haven't always done that. I'm thinking it took them a year and a bit to replace Kompany. It took them 2 years to replace Aguero. It's going to be one of them where we might not see it this season in terms of who is the direct replacement, but I think at the same time there are enough bodies and enough options that will see City comfortably manage in midfield, even if there's not a single player who can do exactly what Gundogan does, which is, as we mentioned, he can play in defensive field, play attacking field, and he can do all of them in the space of a single game if needed. I think you've got players like John Stones we saw at the end of the season who can do a bit more of the defensive work. Phil Foden can do a bit more of the attacking work if needed. I'm sure we'll come on to Mateo Kovacic and maybe even Declan Rice. There will be options. Where does Calvin Phillips fit in all of this? Does this leave a gap for him to step up? It will be a significant step up if he does, but there are options. So they're not short on bodies where they have been when they've replaced other positions. But in terms of one player who can roll it all into one, I don't think they have that. And I don't think there's another player like that on the market. So it will be another test of how City evolve as they always do and always will do. It'll be a test of how they do that, because Gundogan has been so important, and as I said before, he always comes good in the run-ins and the big games at the end of the season. So someone else is going to have to take that mantle as well.
Have City made a miscalculation here, Si, and just not offering him the contract that he wanted and probably earned, given there's still the remarkably high level of his performances?
I'll tell you in 12 to 24 months' time. No, I mean, it's a bit, I don't know. I would like to think that back in January, February, March, I was saying City should be offering him a new deal. But from kind of March onwards, it became just like every week it was like, why on earth aren't City offering him a better deal? Why aren't they offering him a better deal? And even, by April, City were like, even we know we have to offer him a better deal. And they did, but it still wasn't enough against Barcelona's. I mean, you can understand City's stance on, their contract negotiations and, offered him what they thought was very good for his age. It's just that he was kind of outperforming what anyone was expecting, really. No one expects him to have the huge influence that he did. And it will be a challenge to carry that on. But, for him, the opportunity, not just to play for, another great club in Barcelona, but also 3 years and to have kind of a prime role going into the Euros in Germany next year was ultimately more appealing. So, yeah, it feels like City should be able to replace him because, up until March, April, they were very much expecting him to go. So, it's that challenge. I sort of think, like Joe said, Company was the last real one where you thought they'd miss him, and Company went and retired to take up coaching. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on and how City get on without him, because he's a player for 7 years, really, who sort of, it's been easy to miss how big his impact has been.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's kind of talk about replacing him now. We know City are closing in, hopefully any day now, probably when we're recording this, and it'll all turn into chaos, that Mateo Kovacic is coming in from Chelsea, as our very own Simon reports. It's an initial 25 million fee, potentially going up by a further 5 million if certain clauses are met. Now, Joe, City aren't saying, I don't see him as a direct replacement, but in terms of like kind of playing style, he does kind of seem to fit the bill. He's of a similar kind of dynamic box-to-box mold, good on the ball, good in possession, but still a bit aggressive, got some tenacity about him. But kind of, obviously I don't see Kovacic play quite as much as any Chelsea fan, but I get the impression he's quite a player who can blow quite hot and cold. He can look like the best player in the world one moment and then maybe have a couple of stinkers in there every other week. Like, he's in a chaotic Chelsea team for the last 4 or 5 years now. So he's not been in the best environment to really impress. He's obviously a key member of a Croatia team that continue to outperform and defy expectations alongside Luka Modric there. So how do you see this signing? I feel like it's a good value for money, considering when you think how much Chelsea are trying to milk out a Mason Mount to United, but maybe there's other factors in play there. It seems like, I say, on the face of it, like a good replacement. And, especially once Guardiola gets his claws into him, you never know how much a player can get even better. But as we'll get onto, I don't think it's quite enough. I don't think he's shown the consistency throughout his career to be a guaranteed success.
I would have agreed with you on the face of it, because when you first hear his name and he's linked with City, you think, oh, is that it? Mateo Kovacic? He's okay. He's a good enough player, but is he City standard? And then you look at his record and you look at the players he's played with and what he's done for club and country, and he's won the Champions League 4 times and played a decent role in that Real Madrid side that won it. I think he was there 3 years in a row when they won it. He's won the Europa League with Chelsea, helped Chelsea win the Champions League, and obviously at City's expense, but no one expected that Chelsea side to win the Champions League that year. He's got experience if City want to use that in the Super Cup and World Cup. And City's next step is to go and defend the Champions League and go back-to-back and continue winning all these trophies. And Kovacic is one of the few people probably around who is available and has experience of going again on these sort of big stages on multiple fronts. And I don't think he's going to be the same player as Gundogan. He doesn't score the same amount of goals. He's probably a little bit more defensive, and he doesn't strike you as someone who's as sort of adept on the ball and sort of that sort of intricate passing that that Guardiola likes, but you don't play for Real Madrid and you don't win the Champions League that many times if you're not a bad player. And as you mentioned, helped Croatia to the World Cup final and everything they've done. So I think he's going to be one of those sort of quietly underrated signings. And at 25 million for a player with that record, it's fairly low risk. As we mentioned, City have a lot of options in midfield now, and someone like Kovacic should have the ability and the experience to help them. I don't think he'll have the same impact as Gundogan, but if you're going to get someone on the market for relatively good money, I think he seems like a fairly good signing.
Well, when you consider that Phillips cost 14, obviously partly injuries and then partly just not being up to snuff just yet. Like Kovacic is obviously a much better player than Phillips, much more big game experience side. Where do you stand on the side? It almost feels like this is the Kovacic is the player they kind of wanted Phillips to be last year, the one who can stand in for Rodri and give him rest. And I say he's not seen his direct replacement. We'll talk about who could be, but maybe he's a good versatile hand to have given Gundogan's going, and they need someone and Phillips perhaps stepping up as well next year maybe, but they need someone to really take that load off Rodri given how much football he played last year. Didn't he finish on like 70 games for club and country or something ridiculous like that after the Nations League final, which obviously beat Kovacic in? The City do need to kind of lessen the load on his shoulders.
Yeah, I think Phillips still has more of a chance of sort of playing that sixth role when Rodri isn't there, although City are changing all the time, aren't they? That sixth role of Rodri became a double six with Stones. So yeah, I mean, again, a lot has been said already by you guys, but it's a good price for someone who is so experienced and wants to come and prove himself at the club. I'd kind of liken it to sort of signing Akanji last year. When Akanji came, no one was too fussed. Everyone was like, all right, another defender. Right, played for Dortmund, did he? Right. No one else wanted him, okay. And Akanji came with his experience of playing in the Champions League and experience of playing for Switzerland, and was at the World Cup in the middle of the season and turned into one of the best signings in not just for City last year, but the Premier League. So Kovacic will be hoping to show more of that than end up on the sort of Calvin Phillips spectrum. But he has got the sort of experience and versatility to give him every chance of doing that.
We've talked about ad nauseam in this podcast. I've probably written it to exhaustion as well, but I think we're all in the agreement that City needed a midfielder, even if Gundogan did stay. Obviously, we all thought kind of Bellingham would be the one, but he's chosen Real Madrid instead. So, as City themselves have said, there's another midfielder that needs signing somewhere. The big name at the moment, Si, is Declan Rice. Obviously, Arsenal are currently probably leading the chase for him, and he's their biggest target. City look to kind of be snooping in at the 11th hour. So where do we currently stand on the Rice situation? And is he the player to replace Gundogan? I don't think he's quite as refined or as technical, but as a kind of force of will and nature and a brilliant passer. And a really dynamic player. Another one who can really play that kind of holding role as well as further up the pitch. I think it'd be an excellent signing. 100 million. You see, it's not my money. It's either here or there. But if they do get Rice, and maybe more importantly, stop Arsenal from getting Rice, I think it'd be a really good signing.
I think if Rice signed, he would be more of kind of the profile in terms of his, I hate to use the word, but like brand. Signing a player for 100 million or whatever is more like, here is your Ilkay Gundogan replacement. I'm not so sure on the pitch. I think he'd be kind of less similar to Gundogan than Kovacic would be, and sort of more in line with Rodri. So maybe that double pivot comes in there. I mean, as far as I know, we're not really anywhere beyond where we were at the end of last week, where some people said a bid had been made and loads of people got excited or angry, depending on if you support City or Arsenal. And then people say, oh, maybe there hasn't been a bid made. And as far as I know, there still hasn't been a bid. Like, City are interested in Rice, but that hasn't translated into a bid yet. People expect a bid, but people have expected a bid for about a week and there hasn't been a bid. And Arsenal have bid twice and been rejected. And are meant to be coming in with a third bid, but I've known all this news for 3 or 4 days and haven't come in with a third bid yet. So as ever with transfers, there is a lot going on from all parties involved in the negotiations. And yeah, there's a possibility that City could sign Rice, but as you say, at the minute, Arsenal are in the driving seat.
Yeah, I mean, West Ham's chairman David Sullivan kind of went on record the day after, I think it was, their Europa Conference League when saying that Rice is all but gone. He's played his last game, but despite that, Joe, they are still kind of holding Arsenal back. They're not letting him go without a fight. I think it's like kind of reported 100 millions around the asking price, and I should say 2 bids already rejected from Arsenal. Do you think he'd be worth the money he'd probably cost? And do you think he'd be a good signing?
I think next summer he would be a good signing, but you're not going to get him next summer because he's leaving this summer. So I think City could do with a player like that going forward. We've talked about, obviously, Gundogan's going, maybe Bernardo goes, Kevin De Bruyne isn't getting any younger. They'll need another midfielder. And if they want to, say, mould Phil Foden into a midfielder, then he'll need a bit of time to adapt. And maybe that's when you do bring in the double pivot. And I mean, Declan Rice is one of the best defensive midfielders out there. And I could see him in that role. He's played next to Calvin Phillips for England in that double pivot role. You can see him definitely doing that next to Rodri, especially as Si said with Rodri and Stones and how they played, and just the way that City moved the fullbacks inside. I think he would clearly be a good player for City, and he's got that footballing intelligence. And he's spoken, hasn't he, about loving the way that Yaya Toure played and driving forward. He's added that to his game recently, of those driving runs into the box, and you could see it. I think it would be a good signing, but I would put it in one of those. I'm trying to think of other names, sort of like, say, Harry Maguire and Fred and Sanchez, where City didn't put too much in and didn't go pay more than they needed to just to get the player. I could see City sort of walking away because they don't need him, but I think he would be a very good player if they could get him. And as you mentioned, if you stop Arsenal getting him as well, then that's an added bonus.
If not Rice, then Joe, who does City go for? Because McAllister's already off the board. Bellingham's obviously gone. I've not got the vast scouting knowledge of a football manager player, but it's kind of an amateur. I shouldn't be saying amateur because it's my job, really. Selling myself short there, but it doesn't seem like there's many obvious options kind of jumping off the screen for City at present, other than Rice.
Well, exactly. So if they end up with just Mateo Kovacic as their midfield signing this summer, it's not a bad summer, really. They've replaced the body that's gone out. Different player, but Kovacic, as we've said, is a very good player, and we've seen how City's midfield has been added to in the last few weeks of the season with Stones, any fullback on the books, Akanji, Nathan Ake, players like Phil Foden coming back. City will have enough midfielders to cope next season without Ilkay Gundogan, and they're not a team to just spend money on any player for the sake of it. They'll happily wait. They have done. They went a season without a striker, for example, because there wasn't the right striker on the market, and we're happy to wait. So I could see City doing that and not spending money just for the sake of it, just to get a midfielder in. They'll wait for the right person, and who knows, next season someone could have a great year, be available, there'll be a release clause, who knows, and then everyone will be saying in 18 months' time, aren't we glad we waited? And I can see a sort of scenario like that.
Do you feel City need another midfielder this summer side? I mean, I think the only way they could maybe get away with it is if they stick with that same system that did them so well towards the end of last year. Alvarez has proven he can play in kind of the De Bruyne's role. Foden has been coming back into midfield. I could see a way they can kind of get Kovacic in. I can see how they can get by for a year, with Stones being able to play in the defensive roles as well. But do you think they need someone else?
I'm not sure they do right now. I mean, I'd kind of be looking more out wide. But that's just me. I just think we seem to have gone into so many seasons being like, oh, City are never going to get.
You need a left back.
Yeah. But they're never going to do this with only this, or how can they do this without a striker? and they did it once without a striker. But how can they do it without a striker again? And this Erling Haaland's never going to be any good, is he? And all such takes. And they seem to pull it out of the bag. One thing that City prize with their signings is versatility and the ability to be able to for their players to play multiple positions. And this time next year, we might be talking about, Kovacic doing brilliant at 8 or 6, or Foden coming in at 8, or John Stones becoming a 10. They have a lot of players who can play a lot of positions, although not many who can play out wide, I'd say. So I don't think there is a need for Declan Rice, even in the way that they kind of didn't seem to be, but probably was a way for Jack Grealish, unless Guardiola wants to change how the team plays.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not only kind of in midfield that they need or may want to replace. It is, of course, a new captain as well. The fifth year on the spin. Fourth, I think, when a new captain will need to be selected. Joe, who would, if you were in that leadership group, if you were casting your vote in the City changing room, who are you writing on your little docket? I think you actually have to write 5 names down, don't you, for City? But we'll just go with the one. Who do you think should be City's captain this year?
I would say it's between De Bruyne and Diaz. They're different players, aren't they? De Bruyne would be, as the longest serving player, he would be on the same thought process as Gundogan and Silva and Fernandinho beforehand, not sort of an extroverted leader, but leads by example and knows when to say the right things. And you would guess that it's De Bruyne. I think when Gundogan wasn't playing, De Bruyne wore the armband more than anyone else. And then the alternative, maybe a longer term option, would be Ruben Diaz. He's got the speed in his locker. He wears his heart. He puts it over everything, and he's going to play main of the season, especially once. So I would say them. I'd plump for De Bruyne just going the last 2 or 3 of those captains where it's been the longer serving, the senior player, the quiet sort of player who will do his talking when it's necessary, not just for the sake of it. But if it's between them two, City don't have a bad captain at all.
Absolutely. I think we've talked at length at the impact Ruben Diaz made last season. They actually didn't, in 2023, they actually haven't lost a game yet in which Diaz has played. So, for the massive impact he has made on that team when he came back, he would get my vote. Si, who you opting for?
I would have to side with Joe and go Kevin De Bruyne. But I do think it doesn't really matter who's captain, and the fact that being on the lookout for your 4th captain in 5 years doesn't sound particularly good, but winning 5 Premier Leagues in 6 years sounds pretty good. And the fact that they've been able to win these trophies while changing captain probably suggests that there are enough leaders in the team. Ruben Diaz gave the speech to the team before the FA Cup final. Kyle Walker did it before the Champions League final. So, and they're just, they're signing or have signed, depending on when you listen to this, a player who's captain Chelsea. So they have plenty of leaders in the squad, and they're bringing more in because, again, that is another trait that they like to look for from their potential signings.
Well, we'll bring part 2 to a close there, and we'll be back in just a moment to have a little general look at the transfer window as it is. Don't go anywhere. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Talking City podcast. So, we talked about the midfield in kind of a lot. I'm losing it here. It's too hot in this room. I need to get as soon as this camera's off, my top is off. I'll take it for free. Before kind of Gundogan, it became clear Gundogan was going tonight. I thought it'd be quite more of a low key summer for City, more towards the one of 2 years ago when Grealish was the only signing after they failed to sign Kane. And it does seem like that's how Guardiola tends to like his summers. More kind of, I think I've written this sentence to 1 billion times as well, but kind of gradual evolution than sudden revolution. Awful, I know. He likes, gradual changes keeping his squad small rather than all the wild and kind of change that he had last year. Because as we saw last year, it took City a fair few months to really click after seeing, basically Haaland coming in and changing how they played and losing, saying goodbye to 4 players who'd been so integral to recent success. But it's starting to look like it might not be quite as simple this year, given all the players who might well be departing. Gundogan already gone. Aymeric Laporte and João Cancelo kind of look expected to leave. And then the futures of Bernardo, Riyad Mahrez and Kyle Walker are all uncertain as well. Now, it'd be hard to see them losing all 6, but if they did lose all 6, that's 6 really, really experienced players, 6 players who've been absolutely crucial to City's success over the last 3, 4, 5 years. 3 of them played in the Champions League final. 30 goals, I think Mahrez contributed last year in goals and assists. Like, João Cancelo was the best fullback in the Premier League until last year. So to lose all them in one summer would be a massive blow. Surely they can't, but can they?
Would you like a charity bet that they don't lose all 6?
I'm not a gambling man. I am actually. But I trust you more than me.
I think as we spoke about last week, though, there's always going to be the opportunity for City players to explore possible avenues away from the club, and many do, and more often than not, they don't all leave. I think we'd kind of expect Laporte and Cancelo to leave. How much that would require a revolution in the squad, given they played very little part last season? Probably not. Gundogan going obviously has to be replaced. If Bernardo were to go, that would need kind of a significant addition. I feel like Bernardo is the key to City's summer, really. If he were to go, and obviously would like a new challenge, but it's just finding that challenge that will mean City accept a decent bid for him, then that will you'll really need City to replace both Bernardo and Gundogan. But if, say, he doesn't go, you're looking far more like evolution than revolution.
Yeah, Joe, like I say, of those 6, Gundogan sadly gone, was crucial. Of the other 5, Bernardo is the main man. He started both finals, was crucial in the biggest games, as he always has been. Losing him would be massive and would require significant replacement. I don't even know how you replace Bernardo, because I don't think there's any player on the planet who has, his style, his caliber. I mean, if you've got any ideas off the top of your head, please lay them on me, but I have no idea whatsoever.
Well, that's it. He played the sort of right wing role, didn't he, in all those big games, and City didn't lose when they had all the key senior players playing, and it got them the 3 trophies. And if Bernardo was to leave that role, yes, you can put Julian Alvarez there, you can put Riyad Mahrez if he stays, maybe even Phil Foden on the right, but no one gives you exactly what Bernardo does. But we've not heard any attacking names, have we, linked with City? And I can't picture who would play that sort of role, who can play midfield and attack and play across. And even, Bernardo played left back last year, didn't he? So he's one of the most versatile players in football at the moment. But City have known that he's potentially could leave every summer for the last 3 or 4 years. So they'll shortly have the replacements in mind. I think what's a sort of underrated factor in all of these players, and Si touched on it before, is the Euros coming up next summer. These players will want to be playing regularly to be in with a shot of being in their national teams for Euro 2024. So if Kyle Walker's looking at leaving, he will be looking at the England setup as well as City. If he wasn't playing in the Champions League final, if he's not been playing at right back for City as much, is he going to persuade Gareth Southgate that he can play at another major tournament when you've got Reece James, Alexander-Arnold, Kieran Trippier, who are all very, very good players? And likewise for Laporte, for I'm looking at your names there. Bernardo will play for City and for Portugal, won't he? But these are players who will need to not only consider will they play for City, but what will that mean for their sort of international ambitions also. With a year to go for that, I can see that coming into play for quite a few players. And Mahrez has obviously got the African Cup of Nations coming up in January. He will start for Algeria because he's the captain, but he will want to be playing before that to make sure he's in the best possible position to go and win another one of them. So now I think that could be a sort of simmering factor at the bottom of all of this, where players won't just be thinking about the city careers, they'll be thinking about what they're doing for the countries as well.
Mm-hmm. The wild card of the window side has been kind of the strong emergence of Saudi Arabian clubs, or just Saudi Arabia in general, since the government now owns the 4 biggest clubs. Chelsea are the teams who have taken the biggest advantage of this so far, having shipped Kalidou Koulibaly and N'Golo Kante off there already, and I think Hakim Ziyech and someone else may well be going out there soon as well, which is convenient for them given their need to balance the books after such lavish spending. But how has this kind of new force? How will this new force kind of impact City? Because we've seen reports of Bernardo potentially being wanted by one of the teams. It's obviously a massive allure for anyone. The amount of money they are throwing around in wages and not just transfer fees is astronomical. And you can't imagine, you wouldn't want to think of a player of Bernardo's quality still in the prime of his career going to a lesser kind of football. Was it confederation? But there's a strong Portuguese contingent out there already. So, and with the amount of money on offer, it might well be tempting. Like how is kind of Saudi Arabia impacting the transfer window in general, and how could it impact City?
Yeah, I think if it kind of looks like an ideal opportunity for João Cancelo to get a move. You mentioned the Portuguese connections, and if there's a club that wants Ruben Neves, there has to be a club that wants Cancelo, not because Neves isn't good, but Cancelo is better. And the links with Jorge Mendes, and that looks kind of an ideal opportunity for everyone to walk away happy. The Bernardo one's interesting because he's always said he wants a new challenge, but also there's kind of the wants to be close to home with Lisbon, and I think City fans have made the peace with Barcelona and even possibly Paris Saint-Germain as sort of being closer or a bit different. As much as Gundogan going to Barcelona, it's just a new challenge, isn't it? Whether City fans will be as happy for him for that new challenge to be like a rubbish league, probably much further away from than Lisbon, I don't know. It's kind of, I'm sure City would have no problem accepting the money if a big enough bid came in for him, and Barcelona have obviously been hindered by kind of wanting Bernardo for 10 pence in the last few years. PSG would be kind of the meet in the middle, best of both worlds. But there's no doubt that these Saudi Arabian clubs have kind of emerged as disruptors in the market, and even say for instance City did not end up bidding for Declan Rice, their mere presence in this market may have ensured that Arsenal paid more than they wanted to for Declan Rice. Well, just having this kind of Saudi money being like, we're willing to pay X, kind of drives up the price for anyone else wanting to pay Y. So it's an influence, and it's going to get a bigger factor if it comes off, because we are all old enough to remember when China came through with the big money and everyone was going to China, and then suddenly no one wanted to go to China anymore.
I think Oscar's still there, isn't he?
Well, yeah, but that league was going to be the next big thing, and then it wasn't. And Cristiano Ronaldo went to Saudi Arabia to make it this great league, and it turns out he quickly found out it was pretty rubbish. So, I'm sure anyone who goes to Saudi Arabia will go saying, "I'm here to make this league great and more competitive." And MLS is an example of a league that started off as sort of one last big payday for some people, and now has kind of grown into a much more respected league. And you have Premier League clubs buying MLS talent over and American coaches in the Premier League and things like that. But as of right now, it's kind of unclear whether Saudi Arabia is going to go the way of America or China. So for the minute, it's a big disruptor, but we're not sure kind of which way it will go.
Yeah, only time will tell. And only time will tell, Joe, like how City kind of get through this summer. What do they need at the minute? It seems like defence is the main thing. If they lose Walker and Cancelo, I think they'll have to get a fullback. But if it's just one of them, you probably and Laporte, you probably think they'd get away with a centre back. And then, as Si says, it's maybe a forward, depending on the futures of Mahrez and Bernardo.
I would echo Si as well in just terms of width, because I mean, yeah, say they lose Laporte, then there's talk of Gvardiol coming in, and he seems like a very good player. And yes, City have got over the line in the treble in terms of basically playing 4 centre backs in the back 4, and people coming inside and not playing with much width at all. Even Jack Grealish and Bernardo Silva would come inside when they got the ball, but can they do it over the season at the risk of asking that rhetorical question that Si disproved earlier on? But you would say that surely they need just some options for a sort of fullback with a bit of pace. You look at Kyle Walker. City in a large part beat Real Madrid because they had Kyle Walker up against Vinicius. If they don't have him, that game could be completely different at the Bernabeu and then at Etihad as well. So I think you do need a couple of specialists in those wide positions, even if you're not going to play them every game. So yeah, just someone who can play fullback and you don't really want to be relying on Sergio Gomez and Rico Lewis as your only fullbacks, because it's not fair on them, and they're young and they're not the standard that City would want in those big games. And in Lewis's case, not the standard yet. But no, I would say fullbacks and probably just someone who's capable of playing a bit wider.
Would you echo those thoughts, Si? Obviously, City haven't actually kind of replaced Zinchenko yet properly, have they? Because their mishap last summer, not getting Cucurella, letting Zinchenko go, then having Gomez stay. It wouldn't surprise me if Gomez finally does get his loan move, which he kind of quite clearly needs. So it does seem like defence is the main area of concern after maybe the midfield once Kovacic is done.
And Zinchenko is the prime example of, he left and he should have been replaced. And why haven't you replaced him? And is it a mistake replacing him? Arsenal are going to win the league. Why did you let Zinchenko and Jesus go? Oh, right. Okay. Right. Yeah. Never mind. Yeah, it's. I think defense will be the main thing, but not really for Zinchenko. More kind of Laporte is expected to go. They're interested in Gvardiol, which you can understand why. He would be big money. That would probably be their main summer signing, unless kind of Bernardo leaves and they decide on something else big. But yeah, I think Gvardiol coming in for Laporte, say, would be that evolutionary signing that will help keep them ticking over. They've kind of also got decisions to make on the likes of, say, Taylor Howard-Bellis, who was out on loan and did very well at Burnley, who got promoted. James McAtee in midfield did very well at Sheffield United and is now back. Even kind of James Trafford, currently England under 21s after doing well at Bolton. I think he said he was, or did he say it, or did Ian Everett say that he was coming back to be number 2 at City?
He said he wasn't coming back to Bolton either way, is what he said. Like, his time at Bolton is done. He's either going to City or the rumour is he's wanted by Burnley.
Well, yeah, I mean, he basically said he wants to play. And City have not only Ederson, but also Stefan Ortega and also Scott Carson still. So, yeah, it will. So decisions to be made by City on a number of players who've been on loan.
Absolutely. We'll talk more about the transfer window, no doubt, next week when Gundogan hasn't given us a massive topic to fill airtime with. So we thank him very much for that, and we thank him for all the brilliant moments he has given every City fan over the last 7 years. And speaking of City fans, we thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Talking City podcast. If you enjoyed this, you can watch it in living colour on our YouTube channel, the ever-growing YouTube channel. Get over there. It's it's Manchester City MEN. You know how YouTube works. Just search it for loads of good videos of City-related stuff. I'm sure there'll be some lovely Gundogan tributes going up there, no doubt. And if you want to keep up to date with all the latest transfer news as the summer rumbles on, you can go over to manchestereveningnews.co.uk/Manchester City. You can get us on Twitter at Man City MEN, and the Facebook page is Manchester City MEN. But, ladies and gentlemen, until next week, thank you all once again very much for listening, and we'll see you then. Ta-ra.